Today, I'd like to start off by reminding you what business we're in. We're service providers, which means that we enable customers to use technology by turning it on. We fix it when it's broken, and we turn it off when they don't pay their bills. That's our business in a nutshell. We just got a little distracted for about 100 years or so by thinking we were network operators. And in order to move into the future, we're going to have to re-emphasize that service provider aspects. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to talk to you about where we are from a service point of view today, because that journey, this phase we're in now, has still got some way to play out. Then I want to just remind you of the key changes that are coming up. As Michelle said, we're heading into this era of exponential change, and that's going to change what we need to provide. And then I want to talk about the services that I think we'll be providing in 10 years' time. So let's talk about the state of the art today. I refer to this as BromoSIL, which sounds like a thing you take for a hangover, but in fact stands for broadband, mobile, and cloud. And in the broadband world, we've seen a new generation of consumers choose to consume their media via broadband as opposed to broadcast. And that's led this transition to so-called media-centric broadband, broadband that is capable of delivering media. So that media-centric broadband then opens up a whole world of new possibilities in terms of immersive communications and leads to the possibility of all these teleservices, telemedicine, telehealth, telelearning, etc. The problem we have today is that we're still going to see that evolve for some time because we haven't sorted out the standardization or industry problems to make that ubiquitous and pervasive. The second thing that's happened is that our customers, both enterprise and consumers, have made a huge transition to the cloud. Their computing resources are moving out of their own premises into the cloud very rapidly. And that means that broadband has to evolve with that capability to provide cloud-centric broadband, by which I mean ubiquity and reliability are absolutely key. But we also have to deliver lower latencies, higher upstream bandwidths or greater symmetry, and support for a much wider range of devices. So again, a work in progress that's going to evolve for some time. As you can see, many telcos, including Telstra, these are our assets in the Asia Pacific. We've been building out our networks to cater for those new media-centric and cloud-centric broadband. And in Australia, we've built out one of the world's biggest and fastest mobile networks, 2.3 million square kilometers, or as I love to remind my British colleagues, 5.5 times the entire landmass of the UK. So let me then remind you of the next phase we're about to hit, the so-called exponential technologies. Because we're going to see change in these next 10 years like we've never seen before. And that's due to really two separate but interrelated sets of things going on at the same time. The first, as many speakers will talk about, is the Internet of Things, and the key there is measurement, communication, and data. So we're going to be able to turn the real world into a digital world through that measurement, communication, and data. And the second thing that will happen as a result of that is we have abundant computing in the cloud. We have this abundant data coming out of the real world, and we can start applying new analytics like machine learning and search to create artificial intelligence. And we're already seeing the green shoots of that artificial intelligence with machine learning in things like natural language processing, as being done by IBM with their Watson computer, or in speech recognition. And interesting to note that curve, it comes from Google. You'll notice that speech recognition was going nowhere for decades, but in 2010, the curve went exponential, and now it's almost at human capability. So that is as a result of machine learning being introduced in that period. Huge impact on the society, on all sorts of things. Which leads me to the next question, and my final question: what will we as telcos be doing in that new era? So let me start off by talking about three sets of platforms that are going to be important to us. The first is the network platform. The importance of the network doesn't go away, but it changes from being something that our customers use to a platform that they're intimately involved in. So we're seeing the rise of services like hybrid WAN, which are going to require new types of network services like network slicing so that customers can configure their networks automatically using some of those artificial intelligence tools, and at the same time do it independently of us so that they're not constrained by our ability to service them. They can configure and use our network resources without our intervention, and that's through the use of software-defined networks or network function virtualization, or both in combination, but essentially a software system that creates networks. And you'll notice in that environment, the importance of our assets doesn't go away, because what we're able to do is distribute cloud computing resources from the data center in the center all the way out to the periphery and even to the user's device. And that ability to configure and mix and match where you put your computing resources is going to be extremely important. So the network, the core network, becomes a platform that is used by users in a new way. The mobile network becomes another platform. So the importance of 5G is not higher speed broadband, which it will deliver, but the ability to offer services to different users and different devices, whether machine or person, whether government or private, whether emergency service or just a standard user. The ability to offer all those services in a unified network structure that allows them all to get the economies of scale from that network. The third aspect of the network platform, which we don't think about overtly yet, but the network is the obvious place to bring together all the security resources that we're going to need in this new and ever increasingly dangerous cyber world, particularly in the world of the Internet of Things, where we've got relatively dumb devices on the periphery, which have been proven to be quite a risk because they haven't been thought of in terms of security opportunities. The network creates the opportunity to bring together security resources and to manage the security environment. So again, it's part of that network platform that we as telcos are building out and will be delivering in the next decade. So then let me deal with something which I think is going to be a significant change for telcos. Today, our relationship with customers is very much driven by a phone number. The notion that they come into us and they get a phone number, whether it's for their fixed or their mobile service. But in fact, if we look where the world's going, the phone number is usually tied to a device. So as I travel around, I have two phones, one for my US number and one for my Australian number. And that's somewhat inconvenient. Whereas I use Facebook Messenger, people contact me by my Facebook identity, and when they ring me, it rings all my devices, irrespective of which device or what network they're on, or whether they even have a phone number associated with the device, like an iPad or computers. So I think that model of how voice is going to be delivered will take hold in the next 10 years, and by 2025, we'll see the decline, if not the total demise, of the telephone number. And that has some interesting some interesting implications for us as mobile operators, because today we give customers a SIM. That SIM's got a phone number on it, and in that environment, they're not interested in the phone number. All they're interested in is the data service, and they will draw their phone services on top of that data service, and that means they can start mixing and matching their data services between different providers, especially with the use of soft SIMs. So that really does mean that the best network at that point is going to win. So mobile networks, the increasing importance of being able to deliver reliable data is going to rapidly overtake the relationship with the customer in terms of the phone number. Let me move on to the second set of platforms, and these are probably the most vexed platforms in the telco world, which are our service platforms. So we, like most telcos, are trying to work towards a digital-first relationship with our customers. It's in fact the only way that we're ever going to deliver service that doesn't frustrate them, because not only do they get to make choices, but they actually get to help us serve them. So digital first is an inevitability, and we'll move forward in that way. But we're increasingly going to see the use of artificial intelligence in those platforms to improve automation and improve the information that we give their customers, and that's going to be driven by natural language queries, probably many over voice, using their phones to just ask us queries like, why is my bill has not been, the discount been applied, or things like that, and to have a machine respond to that. I think we're also going to be sharing our service platforms on a much more global basis through the use of software as a service. And we're also going to expose our service platforms to our customers so that they can, and our customers may well be co-operators or competitors of ours, because they will use our platforms through APIs to enable their interface with their customers through our interface. So service platforms are probably the key aspect that will need to evolve in that time period. The third platforms, or the third platform set that will become extremely important is the cloud platform. And the cloud platform is going to change dramatically because in the cloud world, we're seeing the advent of new computing systems. And that's going to be driven by our customers' needs to deliver brain-inspired computing to implement all that artificial intelligence. And that's causing a rapid and very profound change in computer architectures. So we're seeing developments like synaptic computing, where people are building chips to emulate the human brain. And we're seeing developments like quantum computing, where people are trying to exploit quantum effects to deliver massive parallelism in calculations so that you can actually get scale in those computing operations to do brain-inspired computing. Just to put that in context, the world's largest computer, the Chinese TNA-2, has enough flops to do a real-time simulation of one human brain. The difference is it uses 1 million times more power than our brain is using. And obviously, that's not scalable if we're going to do artificial intelligence at massive scale. So these new computing platforms are going to become vital to us. And we don't understand how to operate them. It's going to require us to change our operations. It's going to require us to change our programming. It's going to require us to change our product sets. And we have to learn about that. And you may have noticed that Telstra actually recently made an investment in the Australian Quantum Computing Centre because we want to be on the leading edge of those developments. So the last thing in this puzzle that we're going to put together in the next 10 years is the way we serve industry verticals. And increasingly our role is going to be an intermediary between a service provider in a particular vertical and the consumer customers. So just to put that in context of health, if you're a healthcare provider, you're interested in diagnosis and medical treatment. You're not able to understand how you activate wearable devices that your patients are going to wear and that you need in order to do a remote health monitoring. And you're not going to be aware of how you do the network assurance and activation in order to communicate between your patients and the cloud environment that you need to do that analysis that will give you automated indications of patient health. So that is a role for a telco because we play both sides of that equation. We know how to activate and assure the communications and devices on the customers, and we know how to bring that data into the cloud and serve that data out of the cloud on the enterprise side. So that will be, I think, a key component of where we as telcos will be competitive in this new world. So the last thing I want to mention is obviously the relationship of billing is going to change. As I started off by saying, our billing relationship very much today is either subscription or usage or a combination of both. And it's very much you pay a bill and you get a service, or you don't pay a bill and you don't get a service. The way in which we bill is going to have to evolve to recognize that there's a premium for things like latency, reliability, that the complexity of the service that we have to activate is going to determine the amount of value we're adding to the customer, and therefore our billing systems are going to have to evolve very rapidly in order to be able to cope with that environment. So let me conclude, and that leaves me a few minutes for questions if there are any. We're going to move into a world where our service is going to be more important than our assets, but that doesn't mean the importance of our assets disappears. Assets are going to be extremely important, but we have to build those assets as platforms in order to deliver friction-free services to our customers. They're not assets that we're trying to corral and make sticky to customers. They're assets that enable customers to get their own value out of them and to configure them and use them in a way that meets their needs, and those needs will evolve in ways that we just simply can't understand. But we're very fortunate that if we get this right, then the telco industry will still be a critical industry in the 21st century. And with that, I will hand over to questions, unless the organizers want to catch up some time. Vince. I suspect they may want.
Thank you very much. I remember something called intelligent networks and then advanced intelligent networks. And somehow that didn't work out too well. So there must be something new here. Would you help me understand what's different?
So, yeah, I think you and I are the only people in the room old enough to remember intelligence and advanced intelligent networks. I think what's different, Vint, is intelligent networks were a telco construct with proprietary protocols that were still extremely closed, even though they were supposed to be open. The difference of software-defined networks is that the economics of cloud computing, for a starter, make putting your intelligence into the cloud compelling. And secondly, we've got a new generation of innovators, inventors who are producing systems that are open, like OpenFlow, that allow the standardization. And thirdly, I think we have a new generation of telcos who are realizing, certainly we feel this way, that trying to hold things in a closed environment is not in our long-term interests, that it's much more important for us to expose our capabilities and allow our customers to benefit from. So it's partially technology and it's partially environment. Everything has a time, as Ecclesiastes says. Now, there's a question on the machine. What do you think the distribution of machine-to-machine versus human-to-machine communication will be in 2020? That's an interesting question, actually, because I think we're going to see lots of machines out there or devices. You know, the figures in the 2020s are the 20 to 50 billion range, which from what I've seen is probably not that far off, where I think overall in devices, including human devices, we're up to about 12 billion at the moment, 14 billion of that order. So that trajectory looks about right. I think the big difference, though, in the 2020s is there'll be a lot more human-to-machine communication because of artificial intelligence. I'm extremely bullish on artificial intelligence because I can see it solving certain problems that human beings have struggled with for years, particularly in terms of knowledge interaction. So I think when people get the question and answer systems right, and we're seeing incredibly rapid progress towards that, our service systems, for example, and most enterprise service systems, will be about being able to talk to a machine which is incredibly knowledgeable. Just to give you an example, IBM talk about Watson in terms of they're actually sending it to medical school to do the same course as a human being. The difference between a human being and Watson is that a human being can absorb about 300 research publications a year. Watson can absorb all 250,000 research publications that are produced in medicine every year. So then its knowledge base is going to exponentiate beyond all recognition. There was another question, but it disappeared. Is there a human question out there? Yes, sir. So, yeah, look, it's interesting. I've been noticing the T-Mobile, the controversy T-Mobile's new service, I forget what they call it, which they basically zero-rate certain websites on their network. And that seems to be incredibly controversial in the States. In the Asia-Pacific, I don't think that's particularly controversial. We've been zero-rating for years. Net neutrality is about equal opportunity. It's not about everyone being exactly equal, because then there are a whole heap of things that will not be possible. So I think it's not that controversial, but yes, it depends on your point of view. And I'm getting a huge sign saying stop. So thank you very much, everyone. I will be leaving.